It was the night before a new beginning, a time of silence and uncertainty. Joshua, the man chosen to lead the Israelites after Moses, stood alone, watching the distant Jordan River shimmer under the faint moonlight. Though the air was calm, his heart was restless. For years, he had served as Moses' faithful aide, but now, the weight of leadership pressed heavily upon his shoulders. The vast land of Canaan awaited, a land promised by God but filled with fortified cities and formidable enemies. A voice, deep and powerful, echoed in his mind. "As I was with Moses, so I will be with you. I will never leave you nor forsake you. Be strong and courageous." Joshua 1:5-6. Joshua took a deep breath, his spirit stirred by the assurance of God's presence. Tomorrow, the first step into the unknown would begin. Crossing the Jordan River, Joshua 3:14-17. At dawn, Joshua called the people of Israel to prepare for a miraculous journey. Before them lay the swollen Jordan River, a natural barrier that seemed impassable. But Joshua knew the Lord had a plan. He instructed the priests to carry the Ark of the Covenant and step into the water first. With trembling anticipation, the priests obeyed, and as soon as their feet touched the water's edge, the unthinkable happened. The river ceased to flow, and the waters stood in a heap, far upstream. Before them lay a dry path stretching across the riverbed. The priests who carried the Ark of the Covenant of the Lord stopped in the middle of the Jordan and stood on dry ground, while all Israel passed by until the whole nation had completed the crossing. Joshua 3:17. The people crossed in awe, realizing that their God was not bound by the natural elements. He was the Lord of heaven and earth, and the promise of the land beyond the Jordan was within their grasp. The commander of the Lord's army, Joshua 5:13-15. As Joshua neared Jericho, the first city to be conquered in the Promised Land, he found himself alone once more, gazing at the towering walls of the city. His mind wrestled with thoughts of strategy when suddenly, he saw a man standing before him with a drawn sword. Joshua approached, his hand resting on his own weapon. "Are you for us or for our enemies?" he asked boldly. The man's voice was strong and unwavering. "Neither," he replied, "but as commander of the army of the Lord I have now come." Joshua fell to the ground in reverence. This was no ordinary man. He stood in the presence of divine power. The commander instructed Joshua to remove his sandals, for the place he stood was holy ground. It was a moment of mystery and awe. God's unseen army was with them, and the battle ahead was already secured. The fall of Jericho, Joshua 6:1-20. Jericho was tightly shut up, its gates sealed in fear of the advancing Israelites. But God's plan for victory was unconventional, far from any military tactic Joshua had ever known. The Lord instructed Joshua and the Israelites to march around the city once a day for 6 days. On the 7th day, they were to march 7 times. And after the final circuit, the priests were to blow their trumpets, and the people would give a mighty shout. For 6 days, the Israelites marched silently around the city, the only sound being the soft shuffle of feet and the occasional blare of the trumpets. Inside Jericho, the citizens watched in fear and confusion. On the 7th day, after the 7th march, the trumpets blasted and the people shouted with all their might. At that very moment, the ground trembled, and the mighty walls of Jericho collapsed into rubble. The Israelites charged forward, taking the city just as God had promised. When the trumpet sounded, the army shouted, and at the sound of the trumpet, the wall collapsed. So everyone charged straight in, and they took the city. Joshua 6:20. The sun stands still. Joshua 10:12-14. The conquest of Canaan continued, and soon Joshua faced a coalition of 5 Amorite kings who had joined forces to destroy Israel. The battle was fierce. And though the Israelites were winning, the day was fading, and Joshua feared they would not have enough daylight to complete the victory. In a moment of bold faith, Joshua called out to the Lord in the presence of Israel, "Sun, stand still over Gibeon, and you, moon, over the valley of Ajalon." Joshua 10:12. To the amazement of all, the sun stopped in the sky, and daylight continued until the Israelites had achieved complete victory. Never before had the Lord responded to a human voice in such a way. This was a testament to Joshua's faith and the power of the God he served. Joshua's final address, Joshua 24:14-15, years passed, and the land of Canaan was divided among the tribes of Israel. Joshua, now an old man, called the people together at Shechem for one final address. He recounted all that God had done for them, reminding them of the miracles, the victories, and the faithfulness of the Lord. Joshua's voice, though aged, was filled with strength as he issued one final challenge. "Now fear the Lord, and serve him with all faithfulness. Throw away the gods your ancestors worshipped beyond the Euphrates River and in Egypt, and serve the Lord." The people of Israel listened intently as Joshua made a declaration that would echo through history. "But as for me and my household, we will serve the Lord." Joshua 24:15. With those words, Joshua left behind a legacy of faith, courage, and unwavering obedience to God. He had led Israel from the wilderness into the land of promise, and his story would stand as a testament to the power of trusting in God's plan. Joshua the spy, Numbers 13-14. Before he became the leader of Israel, Joshua was one of the 12 spies sent by Moses to scout the land of Canaan. This moment is critical in understanding Joshua's faith and courage. Moses sent 12 men, one from each tribe of Israel, to explore Canaan and bring back a report. After 40 days, the spies returned. 10 of them were filled with fear, reporting that the land was inhabited by giants and fortified cities, causing the people to rebel in fear. However, Joshua, from the tribe of Ephraim, and Caleb, from the tribe of Judah, had a different perspective. They trusted in God's promise and urged the people not to fear. Joshua and Caleb said, "The land we passed through and explored is exceedingly good. If the Lord is pleased with us, he will lead us into that land, a land flowing with milk and honey, and will give it to us. Only do not rebel against the Lord." Numbers 14:7-9. Their faith stood in stark contrast to the fear of the other spies, but the Israelites, unfortunately, sided with the majority, which resulted in God decreeing that the current generation would wander in the wilderness for 40 years, except for Joshua and Caleb. Joshua succeeds Moses. Deuteronomy 31:7-8, Joshua 1:1-9. As Moses neared the end of his life, God chose Joshua to be his successor. This was no easy task, as Moses had led Israel through some of the most formative moments of their history. But Joshua's faith and trust in God made him a fitting leader. Moses publicly commissioned Joshua before all the people, saying, "Be strong and courageous, for you must go with this people into the land that the Lord swore to their ancestors to give them, and you must divide it among them as their inheritance." Deuteronomy 31:7. Later, after Moses' death, God himself spoke to Joshua, "As I was with Moses, so I will be with you. I will never leave you nor forsake you. Be strong and courageous, because you will lead these people to inherit the land I swore to their ancestors to give them." Joshua 1:5-6. This marked the beginning of Joshua's leadership and the start of the conquest of Canaan. The defeat at Ai and the sin of Achan. Joshua 7. After the triumph at Jericho, Joshua led the Israelites to their next target, the small town of Ai. Expecting an easy victory, They were shocked when they were defeated. Joshua was devastated and sought the Lord's counsel. God revealed that Israel had sinned. Achan, one of the Israelites, had taken plunder from Jericho, which was against God's command. This disobedience had brought God's judgment on the entire nation. Joshua confronted Achan, who confessed, and he and his family were punished for their transgression. Only after this act of justice did the Lord restore his favor on Israel. This story teaches the importance of obedience and the consequences of hidden sin.